The road to the mountains had stopped being a road an hour ago. Now it was just 2 tire tracks cutting through wild grass, climbing higher and higher into the pine forest until the trees grew so thick they blotted out the evening sun. Ahmed gripped the steering wheel of the old Jeep, glancing sideways at his wife. Zara sat with her scarf pulled tight against the cold wind slipping through the cracked window, her eyes wide with the kind of excitement only a honeymoon adventure could bring. They had been married just 3 weeks ago. This trip into the mountains, away from phones, away from family, away from the noise of the city, had been Ahmed's idea. A cabin, he'd been told. A quiet place to spend a night under the stars. But what the map called a cabin turned out to be something else entirely. As the Jeep rounded the final bend, the forest opened up, and there it stood, a massive old mansion perched on the edge of the hill, its stone walls blackened by decades of rain, its broken windows staring down like hollow eyes. Vines crawled up the crumbling pillars of the veranda, and somewhere deep inside, a shutter banged against its frame in the wind, over and over, like something knocking to be let out. "This can't be it," Zara whispered. Ahmed checked the folded paper in his hand. The caretaker said this is the only building for 20 miles. "It's getting dark, Zara. We don't have a choice." Thunder rolled somewhere far off in the mountains. The sky, which had been a soft orange only minutes ago, was rapidly bruising into a deep purple black. Neither of them said what they were both thinking, that turning back now, in the dark, on that terrible road, would be far more dangerous than spending one night inside 4 old walls. They parked the Jeep beneath a dead oak tree and stepped out. The air here was different, heavier, colder, carrying a strange sweetness like incense burned a long time ago and never fully faded. Zara pulled her shawl tighter and reached for Ahmed's hand. The great wooden door of the mansion was already open. Not broken open, as if waiting. Inside, dust lay thick over everything, but strangely, in patterns, as though someone, or something, walked these halls every night, sweeping the same paths clean. A grand staircase spiraled up into darkness. Old portraits lined the walls, their painted eyes seeming to follow the young couple as they passed, holding a small torch between them. "There's a fireplace in here," Ahmed said, stepping into what must once have been a drawing room. "We'll start a fire, eat, and leave first thing at sunrise." Zara nodded, though her eyes kept drifting to the staircase. She couldn't explain it, but she felt as if something up there was watching her back, patient, waiting for her to look away. They gathered broken furniture for firewood, and soon a small fire crackled in the enormous hearth, throwing long shadows that danced against the high ceiling. Ahmed unpacked the food they'd brought, trying to keep the mood light, cracking small jokes about ghosts and old houses. Zara laughed, but it was thinner than usual. As the fire settled and the wind howled outside, a new sound joined it, a low, deep hum, almost like breathing, coming from somewhere beneath the floorboards. "Did you hear that?" Zara asked. "Old house," Ahmed said. "Wood settling. Wind in the chimney." But the hum came again, closer this time, and with it, the temperature in the room dropped so suddenly that their breath began to fog in the firelight. That was when they first saw it, a shape at the far end of the room, tall, far too tall for any man, standing utterly still in the deepest shadow where the firelight didn't reach. It had no clear face, only a suggestion of one, sharp and long, like something carved from smoke and old wood. Its presence pressed on the room like a physical weight. Ahmed shot to his feet, pulling Zara behind him. "Who's there?" The shape did not move, did not speak. But the fire guttered, as if some great breath had been drawn in from across the room, and then, all at once, the shadow was gone. Neither of them slept that night. They sat pressed together by the dying fire, listening to footsteps that moved through the walls rather than the halls, to whispers in a language that belonged to no human tongue, to the mansion breathing around them like a living thing. By the time grey morning light crept through the broken windows, both were hollow-eyed with exhaustion. But daylight brought a strange, false calm, and Ahmed, against every instinct screaming in his chest, decided they should press on. The Jeep, he found, would not start. Something had been done to the engine overnight, though neither of them had heard anyone approach it. They were, whether they liked it or not, staying another night. It was on the second evening that the jinn revealed himself fully to Zara. She had gone alone to fetch water from the old well behind the mansion, foolishly, she would later realize, but exhaustion clouds judgment. As she lowered the bucket, she felt eyes on her, and turned to find a man standing at the edge of the courtyard. He was beautiful in a way that made her skin crawl even as her breath caught, tall, dressed in robes the color of a starless sky, with eyes that burned amber in the fading light. He did not walk toward her. He simply was there, as though he had always been standing in that spot and she had only now learned to see him. "You are lovelier than the mountain flowers that grow only once a century," he said, his voice smooth as poured oil, and utterly wrong, like a song played backward. "I have waited so long in these stone halls for someone such as you to walk through my door." Zara's hands shook as she stepped back. What are you?" "I have been called many things by the frightened men who once lived here, before I made this place my own," the jinn said, tilting his head with an unnatural stillness. "You may call me master of this house. And you, beautiful one, were always meant to stay." She ran. She ran without looking back, through the dead grass, through the broken courtyard gate, into the mansion where Ahmed was waiting, and she did not stop shaking for an hour. Ahmed listened to her account with a growing dread he could not name. He had grown up hearing his grandmother's stories of jinn who fell obsessively for human brides, who trapped husbands in illusions and stole wives away into their smokeless fire, keeping them as prisoners of twisted devotion for 100 years. He had always thought them just stories. That night, the mansion changed around them. Doors that had been locked stood open. Portraits on the walls seemed to shift their painted eyes toward Zara wherever she moved. And when the fire burned low, the jinn appeared again, this time inside the room with them, standing between husband and wife as though Ahmed were made of nothing but mist. "Leave this place," Ahmed said, forcing steadiness into his voice, standing protectively in front of his wife. "She is my wife. We mean you no harm. Let us go." The jinn's amber eyes flicked to Ahmed with something like amusement, and something colder beneath it. "Wife," he repeated, as if tasting the word and finding it distasteful. "A fragile human bond, made of paper vows and borrowed time. I have watched 100 such bonds crumble to dust in these halls. What I offer her is eternity." "She doesn't want eternity with you," Ahmed said. "She wants to go home." For a moment, something like fury rippled across the jinn's face, the fire in the hearth roared violently upward, and the windows rattled in their frames as if the whole mansion had drawn a furious breath. Then, just as suddenly, it stilled. "Then prove your bond is stronger than smoke and shadow," the jinn said softly. "Survive until the dawn call to prayer sounds from the valley below, still together, still whole, and I will let the mountain roads open for you. Fail, and she remains here. With me. Forever." And then he was gone, leaving only the smell of dying embers and cold stone. The hours that followed were the longest of their lives. The mansion turned against them in earnest, doors slamming of their own accord, cold hands brushing against their necks in the dark, Zara's own reflection in a cracked mirror smiling at her when she was not smiling at all. Twice, Ahmed heard Zara's voice calling from another room, pleading for help, only to find her still beside him when he turned, pale and trembling, insisting she had never left his side. The jinn was trying to separate them. That much became clear. Every illusion, every whispering voice in the dark, was built to pull husband from wife, to isolate Zara long enough to claim her. So they held on to each other, hand locked in hand, and refused to let go no matter what walked through the walls that night. Ahmed recited every prayer his grandmother had ever taught him, his voice cracking with exhaustion but never stopping. Zara pressed her forehead to his shoulder and did the same, and between them, a small, stubborn kind of light seemed to hold the darkness back, inch by inch. Near the deepest part of the night, the jinn appeared one final time, towering and furious, the very walls of the room seeming to bend and warp around his rage. He reached toward Zara with a hand that was not quite a hand, long, black-taloned, trailing smoke. "Come," he commanded, and the word rattled the bones in her chest. But Ahmed stepped between them, refusing to let go of his wife's hand even as unseen force threw him hard against the wall. He rose, blooded and shaking, and stood again. "She is mine by her own choice," Ahmed said, "not by your command. You cannot take what was never offered." Far below, in the sleeping valley, faint and fragile as a thread of light, The call to dawn prayer began to rise from a mosque none of them had ever seen from these mountains. The jinn let out a sound that was not quite a scream and not quite a howl of wind, and the shadow of him tore apart like smoke caught in a sudden gale, spiraling upward through the broken ceiling and out into the paling sky, gone. Sunlight, real and warm, spilled through the shattered windows for the first time since they'd arrived. The mansion, in daylight, looked simply old now, sad and empty, stripped of whatever terrible life had moved through it in the dark. The jeep started on the first try. They did not look back as they drove down the mountain, the ruined silhouette of the mansion shrinking behind them in the morning mist. Neither of them spoke of it again for many years, though sometimes, late at night, Zara would catch a whiff of that strange, sweet incense smell and know, with a shiver she never fully explained, that somewhere far away, in an empty stone house on a forgotten hill, something amber-eyed still remembered her name.